Good morning again, class, and welcome again to Miss Phillips' science class. Today, we're going to talk about water, and more importantly, the water cycle. Why is talking about water so important? Well, water is all around us. We drink it, it's in our bodies. We clean with it and wash ourselves with it, it's in our homes. We have rivers and lakes and oceans that we sail and fish in for food. And we have wet weather in the form of rain, sleet, and snow. So today we're going to summarize the process of the water cycle. To help you guys remember the steps of the water cycle, we're going to sing this simple song. I'm going to sing it first, and then you guys can join in. Evaporation, condensation, precipitation, runoff to parts of the water cycle, they continue, yes they do. Now you guys help me out. Evaporation, condensation, precipitation, runoff to parts of the water cycle, they continue, yes they do. So throughout today's lesson, I'm going to be asking you guys what part comes next so you can tell me if you remember the song, okay? So let's talk about the first part of the water cycle. The sun is our main warming source, our main heating source. It warms the surface of water, and when that happens, evaporation happens, okay? So what happens during evaporation is that the water on the Earth's surface gets very, very warm and turns into a gaseous state, and it comes out of the water, okay? So the water turns into gas. This is our first stage, guys, evaporation. All right? The thing to remember about evaporation is, again, that the water comes from the oceans and lakes, and it becomes a gaseous force. Now, during the water cycle, water changes its states between liquid, gas, and a solid. So in this first state of evaporation, the liquid has changed into a gas. Let's look at that a little bit closer just for a second, okay? And before we go to our next step in the song, I want to talk to you guys about another form of evaporation. It is called transpiration. Does anybody know if plants sweat? Well, sort of they do. Just like me and you perspire or sweat, plants transpire. And during the process of transpiring, plants lose water out of their leaves, okay? And this allows the water in those plants to also participate in our water cycle. So let's take a close look where that happens in our diagram. That's going to be right here, guys. These flowers lose water by a sweating process called transpiration, and the water is turned into a gaseous state, okay? All right. So after evaporation, who can tell me what comes next? Evaporation, condensation, that's correct, is our next step. During condensation, the water gets cool from being changed from its gaseous state back into a liquid, okay? So now you're going from a gaseous state back to the form of liquid because the sun has heated it up, but now it begins to cool down. And this is where that happens on our graph. Remember, we have two places where you can have evaporation. Transpiration is a form of evaporation. So plants transpire and they turn water into gas, and then condensation happens as that water begins to cool. And you also have evaporation that happens. After evaporation, the gas begins to cool and condensation happens. Clouds begin to form. So the important thing to remember about condensation is that's when clouds begin to form. Let's take a closer look at how this happens. Okay? So the water vapor cools down and forms clouds. You saw the water come from the ocean, become a gas, and get cold enough to become a solid body cloud. Okay? What's next in our song? Evaporation, condensation, precipitation. That's right, guys. The next step is called precipitation. And this is when the water falls back down to the earth. This is where precipitation happens in our diagram. So the clouds get very, very heavy and full. They become very dark, and precipitation happens. Okay? Precipitation can happen in the form of rain, snow, sleet, or hail. So precipitation can fall as a liquid, which is rain, snow, sleet, or hail, which is a solid. Okay? That's the part you need to remember about precipitation. Let's take a little closer look at precipitation. When the clouds become very full and too heavy, it begins to rain. This is called precipitation. What's the very, very last step at the end of our song? We have evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and runoff too. Okay, guys? So when runoff happens, the water from the rain runs off the surface of the earth and it gathers in lakes, oceans, rivers, and streams. Okay? So this is when water actually begins to go back until its initial state and start all over again with the process. So let's spotlight where that happens here in our diagram. After precipitation, which is here, water falls back to the earth and runoff happens. You can have runoff on the surface of the earth and of where water flows directly back into the ocean, or runoff can happen underground and water plants, or just water the plants as rain. Okay? Now, after that part in our song, we say that evaporation, condensation, precipitation, runoff too, parts of the water cycle, they continue. Yes, they do. What this means is after it happens and it accumulates back in the ocean, the process starts all over again. Okay, so now class, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and let you guys break off into your groups, and then we're going to do some practice questions and things over the information we just discussed. Okay, let's do it, gang.